Selma is directed by Ava DuVernay and stars David Oyelowo as Martin Luther King and tells the story of Dr. King's fight to get equal voting rights for black people within America. The film starts with Dr. King receiving the Nobel Peace Prize for his work within the civil rights movement and then immediately picks up with his struggle for the voting rights for black people centered around the southern Texan town of Selma. It shows the movement's non-violent protest, non-violent resistance, and their eventual plans to stage a march from Selma to Montgomery. Uniquely, I knew the supporting cast far better than the lead cast, as it were. Tom Wilkinson as Lyndon B. Johnson and Giovanni Ribisi as his assistant, his advisor, Lee White. I was very happy to see Ribisi in this film because I think he is a very underrated actor. He's also the guy who had to say unobtainium on camera with a straight face at one point in his career. Also, Tim Roth as Governor George Wallace, one of the main people trying to block Martin Luther and his goals. The director and the two, I would say, lead characters, Martin Luther King and his wife Coretta, I knew none of the actors or the directors involved. I hadn't seen any of their work before. From what I understand, the director, Ava DuVernay, she has done mainly TV work and short films, and I simply haven't seen any of it before. And the same goes for David Oyelowo and Carmen Adjeo, and I apologize for any of these pronunciations, by the way. Given my lack of experience with the two lead actors, I am delighted to say that they were both excellent. David Oyelowo, a lot of people have been annoyed that he hasn't got an Oscar nomination for this role, and I can see why they are annoyed, but also why he didn't get the Oscar nomination purely because his performance is incredibly understated, incredibly subtle. I think reflecting the man he is portraying, and I think it suits the role absolutely perfectly. And I think he is superb in the film. But I think in a way it is a bit too understated, a bit too, a bit too subtle, maybe for the Oscars, the Academy to take notice. However, the real revelation for me was Carmen Eggio as Coretta, Martin Luther's wife. I thought she was excellent. I really did. And those two together had great chemistry. They worked really well. In fact, one of the things that really disappointed me in the film was the fact that at one point you get a specific scene where it is explicitly pointed out that the government are going to try and start to get some discord going in their marriage to try and break the will of Martin Luther King. And this essentially involves a few phone calls suggesting that Martin Luther is cheating on Coretta. But nothing more comes of it than that. And to be honest, I wanted them to explore that more because it is clear that there are strains on their marriage. It is because he is doing so much work away from their home, away from their family. It is clear that she is feeling the strain of it. And I really wanted them to explore more into that because their chemistry was so good. And also, she recognizes the fact that his work is so important. But at the same time, she wants the man she loves, her husband, the father of her children, at home with his family. That's all. That's what is important to her. And I think exploring that more would have really been effective in the film and would have given it a whole new layer, a whole new dimension. And I think it was missing a bit. They did a little bit of it, but not enough for me. It's the same situation with Malcolm X. They introduced Malcolm X into the story very early on, but he is maybe in two scenes. They refer to a speech he is going to give. They also very much infer the fact that Malcolm X and Martin Luther King do not see eye to eye on this struggle at all. But they never show the speech he's going to make. And then about 10 minutes later, they drop one sentence into a speech Martin Luther is giving saying Malcolm X was shot. That's it. And I think, again, they could have explored. Obviously, the film is about Martin Luther King, not Malcolm X. But I think Malcolm X is such an important individual in that struggle that they could have done a lot more with the character. Even if it was just showing the speech, it was one thing they did do well in the film. They showed that not everyone agreed with Martin Luther King as to how the struggle should be fought. Malcolm X and Martin Luther didn't see eye to eye on it. And they showed quite well that there were different factions within the civil rights movement, within the civil rights community, as to how the struggle should be fought. And I thought that was delivered very well. The film did demonstrate well just how important this fight actually was. Technically, black people did have the right to vote, but they had to go through so many hoops in order to register that it was incredibly easy for this right to be blocked by those in power, i.e., white people. This was shown really well in a couple of scenes, both with Oprah Winfrey's character right at the beginning of the film, and in a discussion that a group of characters had discussing what elements of the fight they should concentrate on. It seemed like a less in your face sort of way to explain just what the struggle was about, and just how important the struggle was, and why black people were so downtrodden, and why the fight was important. I thought it was done very well. There wasn't what you would call a lot of action scenes in the film. It's not that kind of film. But the ones that there are handled excellently, especially the scene on the bridge where the marchers are attacked by the police. It was fantastically done. I mean, that was a truly great scene. Excellent use of slow motion within it as well to really bring home the brutality. There was no shaky cam or anything like that. It was shown clearly, and the brutality of the situation was shown. That was a great, brilliant scene. I think my main problem with the film is not one that sort of could be actively helped in a way. It's the fact that we know the story of Martin Luther King. Of course, he's one of the most famous individuals in American history and world history. I would imagine. We know how successful he was. We know he met a tragic end, but we know how successful he was in what he was trying to do. And because of that, there's essentially, when I was watching it, I just felt like there was essentially no tension in the film because you know what the end result of it was. You feel anger because of because of his struggles, because of the black community's struggles, and because of the sheer levels of injustice that there were towards the black community, because it was truly disgusting how they were dealt with and how they were treated. But there's no real tension there because you know what happened. And I think that's a problem inherent in a lot of films like this. I think it is a good film, but it lacked that bit of something that really gets the heart racing. I think it is an important story that needs to keep on being told. And it still, to this day, kind of blows my mind that this was all only 50 years ago. Only 50 years ago, black people were being treated like this. Just astonishes me. And for those sort of reasons, I am glad that the story keeps on getting told because it needs to keep on being emphasized. I give the film an 8 out of 10. To be honest, it has fluctuated quite a lot between the 7.5 and 8, but I think the performances of all the cast involved, frankly, do bump it up to an 8. It does have flaws. It is lacking in certain areas. I wish they had sort of explored Dr. King's domestic issues more, and I wish they had involved certain characters more, like Malcolm X. But I think it is a very good film, and I think it is an important film. I think you do need to keep on telling this story, telling the story of the civil rights movement in America in general, from all sides and from all the individuals involved. Thank you for watching my thoughts on the film. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And of course, feel free to like or subscribe.